All right. All right. I am live here for another episode of Axe to Grind. And today we are talking about how to put more elf in your elf games. Hello, everyone. Hello. Um, Let me just quickly hop on Discord to let everyone know that we are doing this. And let's hop over to Twitter. Let's see. Dun 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 dun. All right. Well, we've notified everybody. So well it's been a it's been a really exciting day, guys. So the official notice that we had funded came at 1:02 p.m. So 2 minutes after I launched, we hit $10,000. So that was very exciting. Obviously, $10,000 turned out to be a low goal for us to hit. I put it at 10,000 because I wanted to match the same funding goal that I had done for Buy This ACKS. That felt symbolic. And also, the algorithm rewards you by looking like you've exceeded your funding goal. So you generally, it's a bad marketing algorithmic tool to limit it to too high value. You guys will also note that this time around, I did go ahead and put a PDF tier from the outset. In the past, I had worked with some different advertising companies, and they all recommended not to do that. They said, no, you'll decrease your average customer value. You make it harder to do ads, blah, blah, blah. But every single time I've done this, I've always had people are like, bro, I really just want to have a PDF. Give me a PDF option. So I gave everybody a PDF option. Yeah. So I think that turned out to be right. So anyway, thank you all of you for your support. It's been a tremendous day one. We are at $78,955. It is entirely possible that we will hit 80,000 or more while we're on this live stream. $80,000 is when we unlock the Gazetteer, which is very exciting. Appendix B, the Gazetteer. We've already unlocked all the classes. I mean, I'm baffle garbed. So to put it in perspective, let's talk a little bit about some stuff, right? So day one, Ascendant day one, $9,149. Secrets of the Nether City day one, $6,887. Heroic Fantasy Handbook day one, $7,092. Layers and Encounters day one, $4,859. Sinister Stone of Sakara day one, $3,782. All right. So more recently, Ascendant Platinum Edition day one, $13,011. Buy This ACKS day one, $16,405. And ACKS 2 Treasure Tome day one, $52,856. So we are 8 hours in and we're at $78,955. It's already at just 8 hours in, it's more than 25,000 more than the Treasure Tome, and is 5x more than Buy This ACKS. So the only thing that's ever done bigger is ACKS 2, which did 191,000 on the first day. So obviously with ACKS 2, we were selling 3 books, $75, $70, $65, plus a GM kit, plus a slipcase. So, the average per customer spend was higher than it would be for Before All Others. Relative to the price of the product, Before All Others is actually doing even better than ACKS 2 relative to the price of the product. So just phenomenal to see. Yeah, can't tell you guys how much it means to me. A lot of people have been speculating on what that means for what goals we'll hit for the month. Obviously one can never predict for sure. But I do have a really robust spreadsheet I've created in the past that shows my day one multiplier for every campaign I've ever done. So in other words, for every campaign, um, how much did the final outcome compare to the day one? And that has ranged from the biggest difference I ever got was layers and encounters, which did 5.15 times as much the day one value as by the final. And actually, interestingly enough, the worst I ever did was ACKS 2, which did 1.74 times the day one multiplier. So ACKS 2, I had done such a good job of the pre-build up hype, that the day one multiplier was my lowest just because it got front loaded so much. My average day one multiplier across all campaigns has been 3.74. My average day one multiplier over my last two campaigns has been about 2. So depending where we score, ACKS before all others could do $137,000 by the end of the month. Could go up as high as 406,000 would be if it did what layers and encounters did and goes viral. That would be the viral hit. And then the expected range from where we are right now is somewhere between 174 to 273, probably on the lower end of that. So I think it's going to be I think we'll probably hit the 150 and it'll be a near run things to whether we hit the 200K mark. But those were very high stretch goals. So this is a really tremendous outpouring of support. I just am really, really, really happy. So thank you all of you for your support. So let's see. So we got some comments here rolling in. Back as soon as it launched was already fun. Yes, thank you, Cell Socks. Dan Vince says, Elsila Lumina Vomentiago. Yes. Baruch Kazad, I'm unused, says North Scorpion. Oopsier, Buskar and Den. Yes. Alex making metal music noises like Runehammer was not on my bingo card. Well, we have had a really successful game of bingo today, so there you go. Fëanor died like Gollum and is now trapped in the halls of Mandos. Wow. Dev rolls in with knives out. So Sagaverse Studios. So guys, Sagaverse Studios, I want to mention them to you. DM Juggy on Sagaverse was my partner on the Star Spangled Squadron backer kit campaign. So that was a campaign that each company got hooked up with another company and you partnered up with them, and people that backed both of you got bonus products. He's done the trailer for Before All Others. He's done one of my previous trailers as well. So if you like the trailer, that was Sagaverse's work. And he has a Patreon where he's building out an app that's designed for sort of like live play type activities. So that I wouldn't call it quite a Braunstein, but the idea is it integrates with your Roll20 or your Foundry and integrates offline play into that. So you could kind of have like a living campaign using that. So anyway, thank you Sagaverse for throwing together the awesome trailer. Make sure you guys check him out as well. All right, so let's see. Yeah, exactly. Like, for instance, I still buy physical game books because I like the collectability and I find them easier to use at the table, but I barely buy novels anymore, right? And I think there's probably a lot of people that have made a similar choice for their game books. So I think it's important to offer PDF options. Thank you, the Mule. Thank you. Let's see. Thank you, Kobold. Ouch. Well, it's hard to say, right? Like, what would happen if I did the dwarf dwarf book today, right? Would the dwarf book do better, or are elves just richer and more successful? I don't know. I don't know. It's true, D&D teaches people to read, but ACKS teaches you to excel. Yes. Oh, okay. So what's the reason for the change in the art style for the book covers compared to Buy This ACKS? Yeah. Yeah, so this is a question that's come up a lot. All right. So, the old style of book covers that we did was like this. So Buy This ACKS. All of the ACKS 1 series books had this kind of cover. For ACKS 2, I just kind of got it into my head that I really liked the leather with gold leaf look that I did on the limited edition of Buy This ACKS. And I decided that's what I would make the ACKS 2 series of books look like. It's a little bit more expensive than the old style covers that we were doing. But they are not so much more expensive that it's unaffordable. It really helps my products stand out, I think, in an industry when, most people do those type of covers. It helps me do a differentiation between the print on demand and the Kickstarter books, because a lot of people have complained that they have thought they were purchasing the offset books and they've gotten the print on demand books, or people on Amazon were selling the print on demand books as if they were the offset books, and it was, they felt defrauded. So this way there's a clear demarcation. If it has the full color type cover, that's a print on demand book. If it has the leatherette color, then it's the offset print book. I recognize that this has created a situation where people who weren't able to get the limited edition Buy This ACKS are sad. And that limited edition Buy This ACKS was genuine leather, which is why it was so rare. What I've done since then is leatherette rather than genuine leather. The cost difference was simply insane. I charged so much money for those limited edition Buy This ACKS books, and I lost money on them even so. So I and basically, and my printer told me never do it again. We won't do them for you. It was too difficult. So you have to use a specialized foundry. And so, for instance, if you look at Castalia House, like the struggles they've gone through to produce those books and the very slow rate of production, et cetera. So that's why I haven't done real leather and switched over to the leatherette. I know many of you have asked, Alex, are you going to do the leatherette version of Buy This ACKS? And so here's the truth of it. I would love to. The problem is I'm already trying to do a second printing of ACKS 2. And that will be expensive. And there's minimum order thresholds I need to meet. And there will be a minimum order threshold I need to meet for Buy This ACKS as well, if I was to do a leatherette limited edition. Right now, I still haven't sold out a Buy This ACKS from my first printing. And so it's very hard to say, okay, I'm going to commit to printing a minimum of another 1,000 copies of Buy This ACKS when I got 700 signups for Before All Others, and I've already committed to a minimum purchase order for ACKS 2, second edition, second printing, et cetera, et cetera. It just puts Autark at a lot of risk. I am open to ideas about how I could get there. I just haven't figured it out. So the other problem is that I feel like if I switch that cover over, the expectation would be that Buy This ACKS had been fully updated for ACKS 2. And it is like 95% updated for ACKS 2 because I designed Buy This ACKS after I'd already started ACKS 2. So it was like the transition book. And it's an awkward situation because it says, is it really worth doing another print run of this book, which is 95% compatible, not 100% compatible? Like, am I really adding value? Is that what I should be spending my time doing? There's also the fact that the art style that I used for Buy This ACKS is different from the art style I used for ACKS 2. So then it would say if I wanted to do an ACKS 2 print run, I'd have to get new art for it. That adds cost. So it has a lot of like heavy weight on me. And yeah. So that's why, guys. That's it. It's not that I don't love the dwarves. It's not that I wouldn't want to do something. but I'm dealing with like risk of minimum order size, um, having to manage existing inventory, wondering if it's the best use of my time to redo a book that's already in existence for a slight update, and then wrestling with the change in art style. And I haven't really figured out how to crack that nut. So right now, I think the smart thing to do is just say, look, buy this axe is a great book. No one has ever bought it and said this book sucks and I can't use it. Like it's a fantastic book. People love it. I've still got several hundred copies of it, and this is an opportunity to put it into more hands. And I think that's the smart approach. And if down the road I want to revisit it, I can always revisit it. So um, let's see. Let's see. That would be great. So Mike Guy, for those of you who don't know, is the founder of Lost Coast Studios. So Mike Guy is my partner in the Domains at War Battles project of converting it into a video game. And absolutely, uh, you know, brilliant software developer. I think in like his day job, he does like super important award-winning software that saves lives or something like that. I haven't fully grasped it, but it's like important things that make a lot of money. And then like he kind of slums on the side and does amazing Domains at War video game magic. Anyway, so Mike is definitely cheering for Domains at War for before all others to hit 200K, because then we're going to unleash hordes of people to test the Domains at War Battles video game as we fight the bitter war. That would be pretty amazing. Um, let's see. Yeah, again, DJ, I'd really like to figure out some way to make that happen. I genuinely don't know how to do it, for all the reasons I said. I mean, like, I guess I could do it print on demand with like a black cover with fake gold leaf, but like it wouldn't be the same, right? It wouldn't be the same. Um, John Mecca says will be fully updated eventually, right? I mean, again, as I said, it's funny how much everyone is asking about this. Like, feel free to chime in the comments as I scroll down. I'm sure I'll see them. So let's see. Oh yeah, so there's actually a very specific place where I have always placed an elven fastness, and one of my regrets is that I didn't formalize that and actually put it officially into the Borderlands for you guys, because I get asked this all the time. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just pull that up and show it to you. And so you guys can see in my campaign where is the elven fastness in the Borderlands. So, and this is entirely my fault. I should have uh, I should have put this in the book, but I didn't. So okay, all right. So let me figure out how I share this with you guys. So share screen, window. Okay, so let's okay, so it's right there. That forest right there is where I put the elven fastness in the Borderlands. So it's a really, so I know it looks small, but you know, it's actually a huge forest. Most of the forests in England are smaller than this little patch of forest that you're seeing right here, um, which is something like see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, so it's like 250,000 acres of forest. You know, there are like massive American national parks that are not that big. So, you know, it's just the 6 mile hexes sometimes giving us an illusion that things are smaller than they are. So anyway, so in my own campaigns, this is where I always put the elven fastness in the Borderlands. So, okay. Yeah, I don't know. Let's see. All right, cool. So we made it through the. So what I wanted to do, there were a bunch of people asked questions on the Kickstarter page, and I'm gonna kind of go through some of those, and then I have a bunch of questions I want to ask you guys. And so I don't have a guest tonight, so I'm counting on the comments to you know keep things lively here. So you guys collectively are my guest, and so let's all right, so let's do a share screen here. And all right, so okay, so we got some questions here. Let's see. So Scotty Ramon says, one more thing on my wish list from Heroic Fantasy Handbook. We just need a home for Eldritch and Ceremonial Magic and the remaining HFH classes. So one possibility that has occurred to me is because of all the people that have asked for custom classes, I don't know what people will expect. If multiple people ask for some sort of ceremonial magic, it may be the case that it's a good time to put the ceremonial magic rules updated from Heroic Fantasy Handbook and just put them into Before All Others. Possibly a good place to do that might be to put it under Elven Secrets. If we want to think about perhaps that it's more like OG magic that was used in the Day Without Night, or perhaps the Kepri Great Teacher taught it, or something like that. Anyway, I'm agnostic on it. Um, I the current book is only about 200 pages. Buy This Axe and the Treasure Tome are both much longer than that. So I made sure to give myself room for bonus goals and stretch goals and things like that. So depending what people ask for, one possibility is we might end up putting ceremonial magic into the Elven magic section. Another possibility that I wanted to broach with folks, there's the fairy magic type that appears in the Judge's Journal. We could put fairy magic into Before All Others. And one thought I had, is we have so many bonus classes, was doing some monstrous classes. So like we had the Nosferatu monstrous class, etc. So we could, in theory, do, for instance, like a class based on the pixie or the sprite or some of the other fairy types, or the pisky or something. Like it might be interesting to have, a character class which is like, I don't know, I mean, the one I thought of was the Manic Pixie, Pixie Manic, Pixie Maniac, or Pixie Dream Girl or something like that. But that's just because I've watched too many '90s romantic comedies. But but that might be fun. So it could be interesting to have some playable fairy character classes that we could put in the Elven Secrets chapter, as optional classes if the GMs want them. All right, let's see. Rubicante says, Domains of War add-on, is that something that is going to be revised or reissued in another format in the future? So the answer is yes, but. So yes, eventually I intend to re-release Domains at War Battles for ACKS 2, probably with a name change and some other updates, etc. But it is a long time away. Autark is a one-man shop, and we just do not produce content that quickly. I produce as much as I can, as fast as I can, but the sort of work that I do takes a lot more time than certain other types of game design do. And so, it's like 12 months out until we would think about kickstarting that, and then another 12 to 18 months for it to be released, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't think anyone who purchases Domains at War now would think to themselves, gosh golly, I didn't get to use it before the new one came out. So Baphomet says, please consider, can we get a black cover copy of BTA? So I addressed that. I'll look forward to what comments people have on that. Wesley says, never do t-shirts or silly custom doodads. Yes, this is true. Every time I have ever done custom doodads, I have suffered for it. The most custom doodads I ever did was on Dwemermount, and the most money I ever lost was on Dwemermount. Custom doodads are the death of profit. Ronald says we should add the incarnation of smug to the bestiary. It appears as a floating 200-page book full of smirking elf imagery. Yes, yes, indeed. All right, some folks have added why treasure tome. Okay, so it raised the question: why isn't the treasure tome in the in the Kickstarter? There's a host of reasons for that, but the primary is that the ACKS 2 treasure tome hasn't been delivered yet, and I'm still running late backing on that, and it seemed it would have added a lot of logistical complexity to my life to also then start to track that on another Kickstarter. There's a royalty involved, but there's also like how many do I order and when do I order them, and like real companies run by grown-ups have like entire teams of people that manage this sort of thing, and I don't have that, so I try and keep my life simpler where I can. So yeah, so that's it. So if you want the treasure tome, just go back it. You can still back it on Kickstarter now, and you can get it. Let's see. Eric is originally from North Carolina, happy to support some folks from home. Woohoo, awesome. If you're ever out in Raleigh-Durham area, look me up. Happy to meet up. I've met up with some folks who've come by in the area in the past, so it's always awesome to meet folks. Let's see. Is Buy This ACKS compatible with ACKS 2? Is Domains at War compatible with the ACKS 2? Okay. So Domains at War is not entirely compatible with ACKS 2, but it's about 90% compatible. The main difference is the spells. I am working to revise it, but this process of the Bitter War is how we're going to revise it. So if you have a copy of Domains at War Battles, you're in pretty good shape for doing it. Buy This ACKS is 95% compatible. There's some minor nitpicks on a few things, but I don't I don't think people would even notice the difference. It is yeah. Yeah, it's less than the difference between like the rule cyclopedia and BECMI and BX. Like the difference is smaller than that. So all right, let's see. Guar, update my ambassador's pledge. Yes, it's the additional funds. Yeah. So so the limited edition, the reason the limited edition is more expensive is a couple things. So one, it is literally going to be a limited edition. Like I'm only ordering the exact number that people are purchasing, and that's it. That is what is getting ordered. Just like the leather bound Buy This ACKS books. Like I ordered what people ordered, and that was that. And when you do that, the cost per book is much higher, much higher. So my cost per book is going to be higher. Also, they're going to have gilded pages, so they're going to have that cool, fancy silver gild on the edges, and they're going to have the built-in silk ribbon. And so, like my cost for book was about $30 per book for for some of my prior books. This one is going to cost probably more like, I don't know, I would guess $75 a book. It's going to be pretty expensive. And so I generally try and charge somewhere a little bit over twice as much at retail as it is for the wholesale cost. So yeah. Let's see. All right, so I think that's most of the questions. So that's good. So we can remove that. And let's see what we got. Okay. Does the air smell sweeter inside of an elven fastness? Yes, it does. Are elf cats jaguars? So no, because the jaguar is a New World cat that does not exist in Agroforestry. So the elven cats are primarily leopards, and so black panthers are kind of like drow leopards from that point of view. So yeah, so elf cats are leopards and cheetahs, but really they like all kind of cats. They are cougars because of their advanced age. I can't believe I missed that one. That is fantastic, John Mecca. Oh, yeah. Okay. So, the agroforestry has been really interesting. So, oh, I've talked about it a little bit before. I'm sure some of you are new and haven't heard me talk about it. So let me briefly talk about it. I did a pretty deep dive to really understand how agroforestry works, and it's an absolutely impressive agricultural system. So real life agroforestry uses 7 layers, um, going from basically a root layer, shrub layer, herb layer, vine layer, um, and then there's the low tree and the canopic tree layers. There's one other layer I seem to have forgotten. Um, and each layer provides a different food or resource. And the way they are spread out uh, allows you to have much higher density of nutrition than you would have in either a traditional forest or a traditional farm. Um, so it's really, really impressive. And in fact, what it turns out is that the caloric production is so amazing that you can actually have a much smaller footprint. And so the way the elves are structured is I want you to imagine it like this. Imagine you have what you would call the fastness, which is where the elves live. And that would be, your central hub. And then around that hub, you have the forest gardens where they conduct agroforestry. And if you imagine that you need roughly 30 acres per farm for humans per family, the elves need about anywhere from like a fifth to a tenth of that acreage um, for agroforestry because it's growing vertically upward and because of the caloric density that they're able to get. And so the forest gardens are a much smaller footprint than the wheat fields that would surround a city. And that in turn means that they have a huge area of forest left over that they can use for game preserves, which is where they have the animals that they hunt. And in fact, they produce so much food from the agroforestry that they're able to provide the surplus to the game animals so that the game animals are actually far more abundant than they would be under normal circumstances. So when you're going through an elven forest, um, it looks like this wild natural forest, but it's actually a carefully curated forest. And the number of deer is way in excess of the ordinary number of deer, and the amount of rabbits and squirrels and things like that. The amount of wolves and terrible predators is much less because the elves are the predators. And my thinking is basically is that the forest gardens occupy the area around the fastness just sufficient at the radius that those are the animals they can talk to. So the animals that live in the forest garden are the animals they can talk to, and that they're their friends. And then you go outside that, and then those are the animals that they hunt. And the trade-off there is they feed those animals, they make sure they have an amazing lifestyle, they protect them from other predators who are more cruel and vicious, and then in exchange, they live off the excess of the herd. And so it creates this, really remarkably beautiful ecosystem, and the math just all adds up almost magically. I was really stunned. And I thought to myself, this is so amazing. Like, why don't we do this in real life? And of course, the reason we don't do it in real life is that you can't automate it nearly as much. Monoculture is far more automatable, where it's just a big row and it's all wheat or all one type of tree, and the machine goes chuk 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 chuk. Whereas like this is a much more organic, 7 different types of things growing in one area and like carefully using high touch cultivation to blend it all together is much more productive relative to traditional methods of wheat farming, but it isn't more productive on a pound per pound basis than what we do today, modern farming. The other thing, of course, is it requires a much, much longer time preference, because it can take 20 years for an agroforestry forest garden to fully come together. Whereas, a wheat farm, you can get planted much quicker. So it is regrettably not something that I expect humanity will adopt, but it is a truly beautiful system, and it really fits well for the elves. So the magical component of it is going to be that over time, as you invest in your forest gardens, um, they start to produce effectively divine power that you can tap into for other purposes, and that'll explain all sorts of cool, fun stuff about elves. So the elves are so old that they're smilodons rather than cougars. That's pretty good. Oh, yeah, sure. Okay. So the samurai influence for elves, cell socks. So this is something I kind of stumbled in. So my original approach was that the elves were Celtic. Okay. You can see it in Arran Empire if you look at the location on the map. They're in the location that, when you flip the Mediterranean, that would have been Gaul, Celtic, and moving up northward into Britain. The language group is the same as the Celtic language group that today we have as Gaelic and Irish. The names are Celtic. If you look in some of the art of elves in the book, you can see the Celtic inspiration in some of the art, particularly in the first edition with like one of the images of one of the elven casters. And of course, Tolkien himself used Welsh as the inspiration for Sindarin, which has a Celtic vibe, and in general, a lot of the elven aesthetic that we see in various sources, World of Warcraft and whatnot, has been influenced by a Celtic vibe. However, when I actually was like, oh well, let me read what these people were actually like, I quickly realized that the Celtic culture was not really a one-to-one fit with the tropes of elves. And keep in mind that my approach in designing these books is that I start with the tropes and then I abduct backwards to try and figure out what the culture would have to be to yield those tropes. Um, the actual historic Celts were a fairly bloody-minded culture of cow herders, um, and there's a reason that people talk about the Scots Irish like they were kind of like bloody-minded thugs, and you see it in their histories, you see it in their laws, um, and very much the opposite of what we imagine the elves in some sense. Uh, Celtic herder culture, where a man's wealth is portable, leads to this sort of very violent honor culture, shorter time preferences. There's no real urbanization. There's no real courts. Um, so there's a lot of these things that are missing. In contrast, if you think about Japanese high-end through Sengoku period Japan, you have some overlap to the Celts, right? Like Shintoism as a nature-focused religion with Shinto priests. Okay, we can see how that kind of correlates to the Druidic religion. Um, Rice paddies with the extensive effort required per acre, the smaller footprint per acre compared to the nutritional amount, the long amount of time preference required to build those terraces and create the paddies and invest and drain them and everything. That's the closest analog I could find to the forest gardens. And then when I saw that, then I started to notice like the other parallels, right? So you've got like, these warrior traditions. You've got night blades are similar to ninja. You've got court wizards, which are similar to like the Onimuto. So like Heian era Japan actually had court wizards, which I thought was really interesting, who were a distinct group from the Shinto priests and were separate and were rivals of each other. Um, I had always differentiated that there was elven courtiers who were different from elven warriors. And in fact, and I discovered in high-end era Japan, you had two different types of nobility. You had the court nobility and the warrior nobility, which later became the samurai. And so that was interesting. And of course, if you look at the terrain of Japan, it's very similar to the terrain of northern Argyle. Both are on the east side of continents. Both have a mountain range down the middle. Both are heavily forested, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what I ultimately concluded is that rather than look strictly at the Celtic influence, I would look at both a Celtic and a Japanese influence. And it was in blending them together is when the elves really started to click for me. and so, the night blade started to click, the curved elven sword started to click. Um, and some people have asked, like, "Gosh, Alex, how could the elves have horse archers?" Given the terrain of Northern Argyle. I'm like, well, how did the Japanese have horse archers? Has anyone ever looked at, like, Japan? It's like all this bamboo and forests and mountains, and they're like, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna make our armies horse archers. Like sometimes things don't track exactly like what we expect them to track. So yeah, so the answer is the elves have horse archers for the same reason the Japanese have horse archers, because they're awesome. All right. So, no. So, the core book elf classes and the before all others elf classes, so the Nightblade and the spell sword are 99.9% identical. The only difference is that I will be introducing a few new proficiencies into before all others, and they will be updated to have access to those proficiencies. But just like the Vault Guard and Buy This Axe is the same as the Vault Guard of Revised Rulebook, et cetera, et cetera. They're going to be the same. Let's see. So Scholar at Arms says elves needing ceremonials feels off. I vote for Eldritch and Fairy. Okay, duly noted. Omanal says he'd love to see monstrous classes. Yeah, Cobalt. Happy to do so. I mean, I've now done. I've been doing one Kickstarter a year since 2011. So like Kickstarters have been kind of wild to think about this, guys. But Kickstarters have been a major part of my adult life. I've been doing them for 15 years. Um, and I mean, my business, my like adult life didn't really begin until what, 2000, I guess, when I graduated law school. So like the majority of my adult life, I've been doing a Kickstarter every year. So, um, yes, yes, it is. Um, Yes, of course, there are absolutely chthonic elves. Chthonic elves are a major part of the Arn Empire setting. There's already the Hypogean druids. Yes, so yes, yes, yes. Absolutely the case. I could see us having some half elven classes. That would be really cool. Build them as human classes, but give them the elven bloodline as a class power, and have them like, half elven wanderer or something like that. I think that would be really cool if someone wanted to do that. I would be down for that. Yeah. Yeah, it's a great, great suggestion. Um, Would that be unusable for other races? So I have generally shied away from saying that gear is unusable simply on the basis of race. It might be unusable because you require a specific proficiency or something like that. But for instance, I've introduced some new arrows in Before All Others. So there's new types of arrows available. And I would imagine that anyone who could get their hands on those arrows could use them. What I think is cool is to say that you can only buy them in elven fastnesses in the same way that we had equipment you could only buy in dwarven vaults. Yeah. Um, so let's see. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So let me that's a great suggestion. Um, okay. So all right. So the Hydropian. So the Hydropian is a monster I created for Secrets of the Nether City. We'll be updating it to ACKS 2. And basically, it is a cross between a Hydra and a giant scorpion. So giant scorpion has a stinger that kills you if it poisons you. A Hydropian has multiple regenerating stingers that poison you if they kill you. Super nasty. So the Elven Antiquarian is a class suggestion that came from Chat of Kings. I believe Arborthril actually was the original person to suggest the idea. If I'm wrong on that, excuse me, but I think that's who it was. Um, Essentially, kind of a combination of a Tomb Raider plus Lore Master is to think about it. Um, and if you remember in Capital of the Nether City, sorry, Capital of the Borderlands, um, the Liber Faunus is a adventurer who positions himself as an antiquarian, and he has elven bloodline. And so my idea, and of course he collects elven antiquities as a thief. So my idea is that Liber Faunus is kind of aping an actual elven tradition of elven antiquarians who in fact do go out and they try and collect elven antiquities. Um, yeah, so I sort of like an elven Indiana Jones with some lore master powers, a little bit of adventurer powers, some thief powers, kind of a vibe. Feyweird is an elven undead, updated from Secrets of the Nether City. Elven Purveyor will be the direct equivalent of the Elven Venturer. And the idea, the suggestion is purveyor of fine goods. So whereas the human venturer we might think of as, the hard bargaining, bribing deal maker who, you know, is a commodities trader on the Chicago Commodities Exchange. The elven purveyor is more like a Sotheby's auctioneer or something like that, right? He, he's interested in fine goods. So I'm thinking, like for instance, maybe he changes the market class, but only for precious merchandise. He can buy and sell the higher level, but only for goods of certain value. He's better able to identifying certain things. Um, that kind of a vibe. I think it'll be good fun. Incarnation of Terror is another undead that was in Secrets of Another City that we're updating for Acts 2. And then the Elven Dwimmerbow is like a Zaharan Ruin Guard, but instead of using melee weapons, he uses ranged weapons. And the idea is he can trade spell slots to augment his archery attacks, adding damage types, adding damage dice, ignoring range penalties, things like that. Should be good fun. So Gazetteer of the Vale Abandoned is going to be the equivalent of the Borderlands. It is a regional map. It is going to be sitting at the nexus point of the Morningtide Mountains, the Jutting Mountains, south of the bog that sits at the very top of the map. So the Bandon River runs down that direction. And the idea is it's a retronym from the Old Irish Abandún, which means the fortress on the river, which the humans turned into the Vale Abandon and then later into the Bandon River. So fastness of Abandún will be the equivalent of Sipharon as the market town regional capital of the area. So the Iron Maw of Azan Maker is a strip mined iron mine that has now been abandoned by the dwarves and has been taken over by beastmen. My idea here is those of you who remember the old B2, which had that kind of like terraced caves of chaos, where it actually, if you think about what the caves of chaos look like, it actually looked like a strip mine, right, with the terraces and all the different tunnels that were built into it. So that's going to be the Iron Mob Azan Maker, and that would be a one-page dungeon. That'll be an adventure site. The Crag of Dead Kings. So canonically speaking, a long time ago, the Danian peoples came from the north and they crossed through the jutting mountains into Arapos, had to fight their way through. So the Crag of Dead Kings would be a valley where they buried a bunch of their dead kings as they fought their way through the jutting mountains to come into Arapos. So it would be 3,000-year-old tombs of Danians from who had wandered in from the north. So like proto-juttings, proto-Rornish, etc. The Worm Pit of Skornok will, of course, be your mandatory dragon lair. The Fetid Mire of Moin Fergak. So if you look on the Arn Empire setting map up in the very, very north of northern Argale, there's a big bog, a big swamp. And that is what that's going to be. And it will be a fortress of Fomorians that lives up there. And then finally, the Mound of the Drowned Sun. So when the day without night came, the elves fled into fairy mounds, which were essentially survivalist vaults, prepper shelters for the apocalypse that they had set up. Um, and some of them they never emerged from. So the Mound of Drowned Sun is one of those, and it is filled with ancient artifacts from before the day without night. So that should be good fun. So that would be a high level 1-page dungeon. And then the Bitter War we've talked about. All right. So let's go back up. Okay. Yeah, that would be a good class. Yes, yes, actually, yes. You probably in the same way that the mushroom farming instructions in Buy This Axe were actually based on real life mushroom farming. The rules for agroforestry, the mundane aspects in any case, are based on real life agroforestry. I do not know if you will be able to acquire divine power from planting trees in your backyard, but hopefully so. Yeah. All right, so we hit 80K. Awesome. Elven Community Hub with a ring around it being for crops, outside game for hunting. Where do elves place their defenses to keep away their threats? So elven defenses would be sort of defense in depth with multiple layers, with the rangers as a kind of mobile defense, and then the last set of defenses would be close to their fastnesses. But I think, and I think the math will bear this out, that they will rely on magic, obscurity, and terrain depth more than anyone else, more than normal traditional defenses. Yes, yes, they do. I can't tell you too much more because I haven't yet built it and play tested it. But it's fundamentally built like the Ruin Guard. So it has class powers that you get every tier. Um, it spends 3 class powers in order to get an arcane archery power. It has precise shooting. It has long range volleying and one other class power that's escaping me. What I'm still wrestling with is exactly what the trade off should be on spell slots versus effect. Um, so yeah, that's going to require some play testing. But the core concept is kind of like use a 3rd level spell slot and fire your arrow and, cast a spell through your arrow type vibe. So should be good fun. Yeah, so this is a great question, SB. Something I've thought about doing. So the Elven Warfare section is not yet fleshed out in the book. Something I've thought about doing is in that Elven Warfare section having a little bit like enemies of the elves, and then discussing a little bit how the enemies of the elves fight, and then that might give me an opportunity to talk about the dwarves a little bit. That said, other than the dwarven bear riders, I feel like for the most part, most of what I wanted to say about dwarven warfare, I did say in Buy This Axe. I wish I had statted out the dwarven bear riders. That's my major regret that I didn't include in Buy This Axe. But there's tons of automatons. The orders of battle for the dwarves and everything are in Buy This Axe, etc. So, but yes, I'm open to it. And so if there's as things come up in the Bitter War that say, "Hey, Alex, this is something you should do," like I'm certainly going to do that. It will not cover Zaharans, but it absolutely will cover the evil elves. That is what is in the Elven Secrets, as we will talk a little bit about the evil elves. So the elves have 3 major religious sects: the Hippogian, the Celestial, and the Telluric. And that is discussed already in the book. Philosophical differences within the Elven academic elite. Do they have different schools of thought on how to handle issues? So I'm going to have to defer on that one because some things I'm still working through about how elves tackle certain issues. But they do have 3 different religious schools of thought. They don't stay hidden. So they're not. So they are not banned. This is explained in some material I've shared on Patreon, but basically, um, the elves imagine existence as a great tree. The roots of the tree, digging down into the soil where dead things are buried, is the Hypogean druids. And so they look at how life comes from depth, and they symbolize the underworld and the deep roots of the earth. The Telluric druids are the trunk of the tree, um, strong enough to withstand, the buffetings of temporal society, flexible enough to move with it. They're in touch with the elements, with the animals, with the plants, and they represent the material world. And then finally, the crown of the tree, which soars to the heavens, um, represents the celestial or imperial aspect. Um, they are they look at the stars, the sun, the sky, the birds, etc. But all three are necessary. What happens is, in the day without night, um, the gods essentially nuke the heck out of each other, as do the people on Earth, on Cybele, and and the gods kind of fall silent. And prior to that moment, all three branches of the Tree of Life are all oriented towards the Empyrean gods, just different aspects. So, like Aminar is clearly revealed the most by the celestial gods, and then Calipha as the goddess of of death and the sisters of mourning and whatnot, is revered most by the Hippogean. In the aftermath of the Empyrean gods falling silent, the elves get exposed to chthonic teaching by way of the great teacher, and he corrupts the Hypogean sect and persuades them to actually be worshiping the genuinely chthonic gods rather than the Empyrean god Calipha, who's like pseudo chthonic. Meanwhile, the Telluric druids, in the absence of being able to access Nauravus and the other sort of material world-based Empyrean gods, lapse into what we might call shamanism. And the celestial druids, with the white robes revering the stars, kind of become the losers and they diminish in influence. And the Hypogean become the chief uh, clerical order of Southern Argyle. The Telluric become the chief druidic order of Northern Argyle, and the celestial kind of wither on the grapevine. Um, when Southern Argyle falls, the Hypogean druids are largely destroyed in the south. Those that are in the north hastily rewrite their textbooks to insist that they have absolutely been very loyal to Calipha all along, and it was just a very sad splinter sect in the south that got misguided. Very sad, but we've definitely moved past that now, and we absolutely revere Calipha and are totally back to our original beliefs. Yes. Um, and then when Azandor the prophet returns the Empyrean laws of light, then at that point the celestial druids regain their power, and so they kind of step back up into the limelight. So in the present day, you have the celestial druids who have regained their power, but are looked at with a little bit of suspicion because it's like, well, where did the Empyrean gods go? Why did they come back to the humans first? The humans kicked us out of Southern Argyle. Like, is this really where we want to be? The Hypogean druids are looked at with a little bit of suspicion because of a lot of suspicion because of their involvement in bad practices at the height of the empire. And so the Telluric druids are really running things as kind of the more shamanic, nature-oriented druids. So that's the structure. All right, so I addressed this earlier. If you go back and you listen, this was the first thing I talked about. I talked about it at length. Yeah, so this is interesting. So those of you who know, who've looked closely at the Aryan Empire, you notice that the elves are not immortal in the Elven Empire, but they are ageless. So what we discuss in Before All Others is that the elves used to be immortal. Now they're ageless and then they die. They used to be ageless and immortal and eternally lived. And so their moodiness or their inability to accept how the world changes and whatnot, as I write it, ties into that. So there's this sense of we're supposed to be immortal. We were obviously supposed to be immortal. Look at us, we don't age, and yet we die. And we have these lives where we're supposed to be able to live in endless joy, and yet we don't. And so that's it. If you wanted to adapt it to Middle Earth or whatnot, my goal is always to make sure that it's pretty easy to use the books in whatever other campaign setting you want to use. So I'm trying to thread that needle of making the elves fit for my own setting, but also generic enough that you can use them for yours. So, let's see. Yeah, so Fomorians are in the preview. They're absolutely fantastic. I'm super excited with how they came out. So I think you guys will really like the Fomorians. Um, Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it'll be sufficient enough, but it'll certainly be sufficient enough to teach you some stuff. I've learned stuff. I was positively blown away actually at what I learned. And I've read I think 5 books on agroforestry now, and it really, really has blown my mind. It's such a beautiful, elegant system. Um Balancing that will be the key point, right? Like we don't want it to be inherently stronger than the Ruin Guard. So that's got to be the key point. Um What are you most looking forward to in the book? Gosh, I don't know. I mean, I'm really excited about the druids. I love the work I've done on the druids. They're just super cool. So, let's see. Dwarves statted up as monsters. I mean, for sure, that makes sense. The Banshee are actually very similar to this. The Banshee are really cool. So I should mention on the monsters, I've gone like I did for Monstrous Manual. What I do is I go back to the original source material. I disregard all of like the Wizard of the Coast isms and TSR isms that have been built up over the years. I go back to the original source material and I rebuild the monsters based on early folklore and then adapt it into the Arran Empire campaign setting. And so there's just a lot of really fun, rich Celtic lore that I've gone back to. And so you see it in the Fomorians, you're going to see it in the Banshee. Some of the other monsters are just a real delight. Um, okay, so fairy dragons are not currently present, but this raises an interesting question. So as you guys know, I had 5 High King slots, and we sold out of those in the first hour. So I added 5 more, and we sold out of those. I don't think I can do any more High King slots. It's too many classes. But I could create a new backer tier for people that want to do custom monsters. And so let me know in the comments if you think it would be worthwhile creating a backer tier for custom monsters. It would be somewhere in between the $1,000 and the $2,000 tier for a custom monster. I like if there's demand for it, I can do it. Like I'm happy to throw custom monsters in for people who want them. So anything on the Elven Navy and how it may differ from humanity? Yeah, so this is a great question. Um, I'm really wrestling with this. I'm really wrestling with this. Obviously, the elves have magic um, in excess of what humans do. Um, They also are sitting on the East Coast, which and they control essentially most of the East Coast of Iropos, or did, which suggests ocean going versus strictly Mediterranean style navy. So there's an argument that they should have some of their own vessels. They should have their own ocean going vessels that perhaps have taken voyages out east. Um, Part of me wants to give them lateen sails or some other sort of advanced rigging for those ocean-going vessels, so that they don't have the strict square rigging vessels that are used by the Arran Empire in the Ersatz Mediterranean. I'm hesitant to do that for other reasons, so I keep going back and forth on it. Anyway, there's an argument for advanced seafaring. There's an argument not to do it. It's TBD. It's TBD. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, obviously, I want to accept, I want to accept high tier pledges when I can. It makes a really, really, really big difference for the company, for Autark to be able to accept that. Like, that's the beauty of Kickstarter more than anything is the ability to let someone like it's really interesting actually. So I have guys that have backed me. They've come in on a project that they've been really passionate about, and they backed me for $1,000. And then the next year they've been like, "Hey man, things are rocky right now. I'm just getting the PDF or this product doesn't really. I'm not that excited about Ascendant, but I'll back it at PDF just because I like to back everything you do." And then a couple years later, they've come back in and been like, "Hey, I'm doing Cosmark. I'm doing 2,000 on this one." Um, and then have had other people that have never missed a product, but and they've never missed a product, and they've been $10 a month Kickstarter, $10 a month Patreon, and PDF all the way through, right? And it's just like the beauty of being able to use these systems is that there's ways for people to be involved in the community and show their support for ACKS and for me at all different price points. And someone told me when I was first starting this, I was like, because I said I feel crazy trying to make a living from role playing games. One of my buddies said to me, he's like, Alex, the way to make a living from role playing games is to find 1,000 fans and figure out how to get $100 per fan. That's it. He said, and if you can make $100 profit per fan, you can make a living with role playing games. All you need is 1,000 fans, and he was totally right. So anyway, I'm hugely grateful for the ability to have like some of these high tier pledge levels, and like it makes such a massive difference in my ability to do this, because it means I can have this kind of relationship where I can just get on a live stream and chat with you guys for an hour and a half and take notes and say like, okay, if I do this, like people are going to support it. Like this is that kind of relationship. That's really great. So anyway, so yeah, I could do a custom monsters if people think they'd be into it, or not. Like I just want to do reward tiers that people are excited about. Um, I do try and curate them and make sure that what comes through is really good. For the most part, it's actually pretty easy to curate, because I think Axe kind of self-selects, right? Like, you know, anybody who's willing to invest in a 1,500-page set of games with a heavy focus on economics has kind of like already self-selected for a certain level of seriousness about their hobby. And people like to tweak me, and they like to have their sense of humor, but at the same time, the vast majority of what people get come in with a lot of earnestness and a lot of seriousness. And I think if anything has gone wrong, it has been my desire to make people happy. I've occasionally made some of the custom stuff a little too powerful, like the Thracian Gladiator. Like looking back, like okay, I can see that was probably that class was a little OP, and or the gnomes giving them infravision when nobody else got infravision. Okay, that was probably a mistake in retrospect. So anyway, let's see. Yeah, I do think there's an elven air force of some sort. I think elves they have hawks. I was thinking it might be interesting as a monster. Right now we have rocks, which are sapient, and then we have giant hawks, which are not sapient, which aren't quite big enough to ride on. And I was thinking it might be interesting to have a crossbreed of rocks and hawks, which is effectively non-sapient but rideable giant eagles. That feels like a niche that still needs to be put in there. So yeah, giant owls is a good suggestion. Yeah, rock hawk. Yeah, it sounds like a metal band. Actually, I would totally do that. I mean, there could be griffins and dragons. Yeah, I mean, I think elves could ride griffins. They could ride dragons. Yeah. Raw chicken. I don't know if you mean like uncooked chicken or rules as written chicken. I genuinely am not sure. Yeah. Okay. So let's see. So I asked about the monster tier, so that was good. I talked to you guys about ceremonial magic. I wanted to ask about that. I talked to you guys about the idea of including fairy magic. Um, so that was good. And I talked to you guys about my idea of having a little bit of focus on enemies of the elves in the Elven War section. So that was good. I think that was the major points I wanted to ask you. Oh, I had one other important question I wanted to ask you guys about. I was thinking about adding 2 new backer tiers. Um, and it would be like the Elven Imperialist, but I was thinking it would be called the Aran Interloper, and it would be just ACKS 2 without before all others, right? So just ACKS 2 without before all others. Not sure if that's a good idea or not, but I could imagine someone saying like, bro, I just want the second edition. I don't necessarily want the elf book. I just want to get in on the ACKS 2 books. Or alternatively, it could be Aran Interloper and it's just the revised rule book without before all others. So for someone who just wants a chance to get the second printing of the revised rule book, um, and doesn't necessarily want to have the others. And I'm mixed on it, but I feel like at the end of the day, like if someone really wants to just get the revised rulebook or something, like I should probably have some way for them to get that. I don't know. I'd like to hear your thoughts, guys. Are the elves in the Arn Empire on a permanent decline, or can they make a comeback? They are not on a permanent decline. They can make a comeback, and they have a plan to make a comeback. So, philosophically speaking, I don't like deterministic history. Um, I like the idea that there are trends, but that through heroic action, you can reverse the trends or hold back the dark times for a period or whatnot. So, so it is the case that in the absence of great and heroic and noble effort, the elves are in decline, but it need not be a permanent decline. They can achieve greatness again. And I think human history shows that great leaders and great moments in time can happen. So yeah. Oh, that's an interesting idea. Yeah. So you do the R and Interloper, you get the ACKS 2 revised rulebook, and you get the Elf PDF. That's an interesting idea. Yeah, yeah. Um, so I don't know if it does actually. Someone could try and let me know. I did not put the pledge a dollar one. I could just do pledge a dollar with add-ons. That would be another way to do it, guys. I literally could just do that. I don't really see a downside. If I put my Google do be evil hat on, the downside is you say, well, if someone really wants the revised rulebook sufficiently enough, uh, in theory, by making sure that they have to also get before all others, you force them to spend more and you've price discriminated in a way that wouldn't be possible if you had allowed them to just purchase a revised rulebook. So like that would be like the evil marketing argument for why not to do that. I'm not hugely persuaded by it. I mostly didn't include it actually because I didn't think of it. Just I just didn't think of it in time, and then I launched today, and I was like, oh, that was dumb. I probably should have done that, and now I'm regretting it. So, um, and maybe you can. So like, I'd be interested if someone pledges a buck and does an add-on if that's the case. Yeah. So, what's up, my brother? So for those of you who don't know, Arcanist Will is my brother. And so it is his fault. He was the one who first taught me to play Dungeons and Dragons many years ago, and all of my first edition Dungeons and Dragons books are inherited from him, and all of this is his fault. So, all right. So Gone Barleycoin says, "Bro, I just want the second edition. I'll get before all others later." Yeah. Okay. So that's persuasive. So I should add those as new. I could add those as tiers. Yeah. Yeah, I could do that. $1 pledge allow you to do the add-on. So, is there a $1? Like, I didn't put a $1 pledge level, but There is one. Make a pledge without a reward. Hey, I wonder. So it won't let me pledge to my own campaign, but if someone wants to do this as an experiment, I would be interested if someone does a $1 pledge, whether or not they can do add-ons. Half elves are not a player race. In Acts 2, you become a half elf by having the elven bloodline proficiency. But someone suggested earlier they might do a half elven character class, so that could be cool. Yeah, so that's what I think, right? Like it has to be a physical tier. Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah. That would have to be a really high backer tier, man. Really high backer tier. Yeah, I guess that's a potential downside. Choice overload. Yeah. No visual difference. Just trying to keep it clean. It'll say on the inside that it's the second printing. Um, so one thing I do want to specify, because some people have asked about this. So the second printing is going to have the same backer list in the back of the book as the first printing. I think that's important because you want to reward people who come in as the first printing backers. So the backer names for this book will go into before all others. They won't go into the ACKS 2 books. There's a host of other reasons to do that, including keeping the page count the same. Um, but I just think like I really want to make sure that someone says, "Well, screw it, I should have just done the second printing or blah blah." Like I don't want to have that. So, um, okay, let's see. Uh, yeah, that's what I was saying. Basically, you could have sort of like non-sapient giant hawks of some sort, or giant vultures or some sort. I think, if we go down that route with the Tarn riders, like, then we have to add in the whole slave girls and like gore, and it just, it becomes a whole thing. So, um, anyway, let's see. I think you added a few hundred offset prints. They'd all sell, but then you'd have to store the things, and I don't think Stiletto would approve. Yeah. Yes, you can do it via backer kit later. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, maybe that's the way to do it. $1 for access to the add-ons. Yeah. Actually, I would be interested real quick. Just give your sentiments in the comments. What do you guys think is better? $1 for access to the add-ons or are an interloper tier? Please drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd like to know what you think. There will be, yeah. I'll have rules on elven crime and punishment. For sure. Okay, so this is a very funny story. So, my brother and I were both introduced to science fiction and fantasy by our mother, who is an avid reader. I mean, this woman is one of the fastest readers I've ever seen in my life. She can consume a book page, um, and had an enormous library of science fiction and fantasy books. And it just, completely opened up. It would read to us as children, introduce me to all the great fantasy works, and just completely opened up the library of her books to me until I got to the gore books. And when I went to like read the gore books from the bookshelf, man, I got the hand slap and the no, those are not for you. And I'm like looking at the cover, and I'm like, are you sure this looks like it? You know, I'm 14 years old. This looks like a really good book for me. And hand smack. Then she took the books, she hid them in the attic or something. Never saw those gore books again. And and years pass, and my mother becomes friends with my wife and starts sending her book recommendations. And my mom starts sending Amy these like romantic fantasy, urban fantasy novels. These are spicy. Like I had never read books like this before in my entire life. and apparently this is what like this whole genre is. And so now I look back and I finally went and read the Gore books, and I've read some of these romantic fantasy novels, and I'm like, yeah, you know what, this is too much information. We're going to stop the story here. Yeah. All right. So, okay. $1 to access the add-ons. $1 for the add-on. Are an interloper, add-ons, are an interloper. Truth. Yeah. 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 Ah, that's hilarious. The truth of the matter is the Gore books are less spicy than contemporary romantic fantasy that is just completely mainstream. They are less spicy than that. They are like halfway between the Conan novels and like I don't know what was that novel that came out? It was like the Minotaur, and he's like she milks him or something, and this is a New York Times bestseller. So they're way less spicy than that. This is not true. That is not true at all, Chubby Funster, and I will have you know you should not spread these. Yes, this is not true. Yeah. Xanth books, are they? I remember the Xanth books being really like cute and fun. Are they? Now, actually they were Piers Anthony books, weren't they? They probably are little suspect looking back, aren't they? Huh. Yeah. They are great. They are great sword and sorcery fantasy stories. They're actually really, really fun sword and sorcery stories. Anyway, so um, this is an actual story. I'm not making up. It is an actual novel where like it's like it's some sort of minotaur milk farm where like the girls milk the minotaurs. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know. They're just there's. We're gonna explore all of this when I do the ACKS romantic fantasy supplement and make a gazillion dollars. So that's gonna be the one that really puts me on the map. We're gonna do it's gonna be the it's gonna be a 7-figure Kickstarter, and yeah, it's gonna be, my wife's gonna write it. Oh my God, my wife is watching the video right now, and I just looked over and she is laughing, and I am probably in trouble. Okay. So yeah, that's awkward. That's awkward. Yep. See, check this out, right? So we're gonna see, that's me up on the screen. Yeah. Wah, wah, wah. Oh man. Yep. 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 Yeah. This is the layer here, everybody. If you guys want to see the layer here, so Blade Dancer, do you want to wave hello to everybody? Yeah, there you can see her right there. She's waving hi. No, that's right, guys. I'm not actually recording this from a dungeon. This is a curtain. It's not. I don't actually live in a dungeon. So, yeah. So here's an interesting thing, actually. I got approached by a writers group that wants to do ACKS 2 books. So I do think there's probably an opportunity to do some ACKS 2 books, and I'm seriously considering it. First thought I had. Tell me what you guys think about this, right? So, Tales of the Treasure or something like that. And the idea is we take the treasure tome, and each author writes a short story about one of their favorite items from the treasure tome, because they have so many awesome, flavorful items, like the Hand of Calamity, for instance, which have these plot twists built into them. And you could imagine, like, there's easily 20 short stories could come out of the treasure tome. 20 short stories of 10,000 words each is a 200,000 word fantasy novel. That could be fantastic. So anyway, I think I'm gonna kickstart that next year. Could be good fun. I remember the book of erotic fantasy. I also remember the book of Vile Darkness, which was actually which was really good. What are the logistics and economics of ACKS 2 smut? Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I think in general, removing infravision from all player character races was smart. And then giving like the shadowy senses to the thieves. I think that was a good play. Elf porn greater than German porn, greater than Amish porn, greater than dwarf porn. The problem with this comment is I think I actually agree. You know, um, I didn't think about doing it as a contest. I got approached by these guys. They're called the Alpha Mercs, and they're doing the Alpha Mercs are actually doing the official Car Wars anthology that's coming out. And so they approached me like, "Hey, would you like us to do an anthology with you?" So um, that would be cool. Yeah, yeah. Listen, I didn't need to see it either, brother, but this is the world we live in at this point. So yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know. I just work here. Okay. Well, we got about 5 minutes left. Anything else you guys want to chat about before that is not involving prostitution economics? Thank you, Glasspug. Yes. Any other topic that we should discuss before we wind down this one? Oh. Yes, absolutely. I would love that. I would love to do that. I think that would be great. I mean, I had hoped to do that already. It didn't work out, but at some point, Conan will hit public domain, and then we will do Hyboria for ACKS, and it will be awesome. It will be awesome. Elf fashion. I've already written the section up. It will definitely be in the book. We will be all about elf fashion. One of the things that I decided is that the elves actually have access to silk. So in obviously the Romans did have access to silk. It came in by way of the trade routes from China in the real world. But if you look at where northern Argyle sits, as I mentioned, it sits in a location similar to Japan. The climate would be hospitable to silkworms, and so I think the elves actually have access to silk, and so that will be part of elven fashion. I think that'll be pretty cool. So did I, but as it turns out, the people that held the rights to the Robert E. Howard stuff did not agree. So right now you could purchase the Elven Imperialist as a backer option. That would get you before all others, plus all of the ACKS books would be your best option, Ross. No, elves are not particularly technologically advanced. They're at about the same level as the Arans. They are not. They do not have the equivalent of automatons like the dwarves do. They also have silk that comes in, as well as other trade goods, fine china and whatnot. Um, but I imagine the trade in that direction is not as perhaps not as important as it was in antiquity. Yeah, so it's being worked on, but no particular update. So. I've got a couple guys have done a really bang up job doing a full markup of ACKS 2, and so they're building out a wiki and whatnot. So we're plugging away at it. But as in so many things, I'm just a choke point on so much of this stuff. And yeah, yeah, it's explained in the book. Yeah, he asks. You said when elves reproduce, they weaken. Will this be explained in the book? So yes, yes, it will be. Yeah, so the metaphysical explanation basically is that the elves were blessed by the gods to be able to kind of tap into the divine power in plants and the earth, which we know is something that can be accessed by magic and whatnot. And so in the origins of their agroforestry, they were kind of perpetually self-renewing their energies from such things. And then when the day without night happens and the forests are destroyed and the blessings of the gods go away, and so suddenly you have this, this physical form which is intended to be sustained by those energies, and then those energies are lacking, and it messes up the vibe. Any thoughts on a starter set or starter books? I think about a starter set or starter books every day. I haven't figured it out. Um, I consider it a very, very, very tough nut to crack. So I'm kind of hoping one day that a prodigious young RPG genius will approach me, having already written the books, and I'll just need to publish them. All right, well, guys, it's 10:30. I usually do a 90-minute stream, so we'll call that a day for the stream. Once again, I am so grateful to everyone for your support for Before All Others, and just in general for all the support you guys give to Axe and Autark and me. And it really means a lot to me. I mean, as you just saw, like I do this from my home and just working here with my wife, and it's getting to do a dream job, really. So thank you so much, guys. It's just tremendous, and we'll hope this Before All Others momentum continues, and I would love it if we hit the Bitter War stretch goals and really can make that happen. So thank you all. Cheers, guys.